Hi everybody! It's been a while, huh? Welcome to Storytime with Fairfield County Library. My name is Miss Nina and I am so excited to be back for Storytime today. Are you guys ready? Alright, okay. This month is Women's History Month. To celebrate, this week's theme is going to be Women of History. In this video, we are going to read 2 books that tell stories about some famous women who did some really cool stuff. All right, the first person we're going to read about is Lena Horne, and we're going to do it with this book, The Legendary Miss Lena Horne by Carole Boston Weatherford, art by Elizabeth Zunon, and published by Antheum Books for Young Readers. The Horne family tree was laden with achievers. Teachers, activists, a Harlem Renaissance poet, the dean of a black college, and Lena's grandmother, Cora Calhoun Horne, a college graduate. Lena's father, Teddy, had other ideas. A street hustler, he lived high on the hog, had fine clothes and fancy cars, never went to jail, and eventually owned a hotel and restaurant. Lena's mother, Edna, was an actress in a touring troupe. The day Lena arrived, Teddy bet on a card game to pay the hospital bills. June 30th, 1917, Brooklyn. Native New Yorker Lena Horne was born into the freedom struggle. At 2, she became not just one of the youngest members of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, but also a cover girl for the NAACP branch bulletin. When Lena was barely a toddler, Teddy left for Pittsburgh and turned his smarts to becoming a gambling kingpin. Her stage-struck mother hit the road too. Little Lena stayed with her grandmother Cora in the family's 4-story Brooklyn townhouse. Cora had high standards and drilled into Lena good manners, black pride, and the value of a well-rounded education. Lena learned to read before kindergarten. Books were her lifelong love, a haven from hardship and heartache. Cora enrolled Lena in drama and dance lessons, but would not hear of a show business career. Not for respectable folks, Cora said. Cora had high hopes for her granddaughter, but at a tender age, Lena got toted along as her mother chased big parts in vaudeville. Lena lived out of a suitcase, shuttled between relatives, boarding houses, and homes that took in children for pay. Being on the road with her mother was rough, especially down south. Lena's shoes never fit and her feet always hurt because stores did not let blacks try on shoes before buying. A black cast member was lynched, and a black guest was beaten at the rooming house where Lena and her mother were staying. Lena longed for home. Back under Cora's wing in Brooklyn, Lena attended an integrated all-girls school, one of the city's best, and joined a debutante social club. During the Great Depression, Lena left school and moved in with her mother and new stepfather, both jobless. As money ran out and bread lines grew, Lena's mother decided to put her on stage. Lena auditioned at the Fairfield Cotton Club. Harlem's hottest night spot had valet parking, sizzling black musical revues, waltzing waiters, and no mingling between the black performers and the all-white audience. "I had no talent," said Lena. "All I had was looks." Just a teen, Lena sashayed onto the chorus line. Band leaders Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway were now her teachers. Edna chaperoned and coached Lena with singing. Before long, Lena leaped from the chorus line to Broadway in Dance with Your Gods. Then came the singing and dancing gig with the Noble Cecil Society Orchestra. Classy as they were, the black band still had to enter white ballrooms through the back door and could not stay at white hotels. For a place to sleep after shows, band members had to scout for black families wanting to take in a few musicians for the night. With Cecil, 18-year-old Lena cut her first record, I Take to You. Lena took to the spotlight so well that she was soon fronting an all-white big band, one of the first black vocalists to do so. Touring with the Charlie Barnet Orchestra was far from glamorous, though. Lena was banned from the bandstand between numbers. Restaurants refused to serve her and hotels refused her rooms, and she slept in the bus until Barnett got wise. He began introducing her as Cuban, but that didn't take the sting out of racism. When Lena headlined a nightclub out west, Hollywood studio execs caught her act. She had already starred in a couple of low-budget films, including The Duke is Tops. Now, MGM was offering something more, a studio contract, the first ever for a black actress. But the NAACP wanted Lena not only to command a paycheck, but to demand respect. With the civil rights group behind her, Lena waged a one-woman war against stereotypes by refusing to play maids and mammies on screen. NAACP leaders hoped Lena could change the way that whites saw African Americans. Respectable roles, though, were few for black actresses. So Lena was cast instead in singing numbers that could be easily snipped from films when shown in the South, so as not to defy racist views. Lena dubbed herself a butterfly pinned to a column. She did get to fly in black films like Cabin in the Sky and Stormy Weather, whose title songs became her anthem. Even in black and white movies, the butterfly dazzled. Lest Lena be mistaken on screen for white, Max Factor created makeup just to darken her skin. Then she lost roles to white actresses who wore her makeup to play light-skinned black women. Black moviegoers didn't have it any better than Lena. Southern theaters that didn't bar blacks made them use a colored entrance, sit in the balcony, or wait for midnight screenings. Although Lena despised Jim Crow laws, she did her part for the war effort, singing on armed forces radio stations. But even the military was segregated. Just as there were separate bathrooms, water fountains, and waiting rooms in the South, there were separate shows, one for black troops and one for whites. At one venue, Lena was denied a cup of coffee but was asked for autographs on her way out. At another, German prisoners of war were seated in front of black soldiers. That indignity was too much for Lena to swallow. She was fed up with whites-only clubs and theaters. So she paid her own way to perform for black troops. She paid many visits to the base in Alabama, where the famed Tuskegee Airmen were training to become the first black military aviators. After World War II, Lena's ties to outspoken activists like entertainer Paul Robeson and civil rights leader W.E.B. Du Bois got her blacklisted. Though not a communist, she couldn't get work in Hollywood, not during Senator Joe McCarthy's Red Scare. She sang at President Truman's inaugural ball just the same. By then, Lena had married and divorced and had 2 children to feed. She had to work. "You got babies," singer Billie Holiday once told her. "You gotta pay your rent." Like Cora said, never let anyone see you cry. Lena kept her tears and her love life to herself. In 1947, she married Lenny Hayton, a white music director for MGM. They married in Paris, France, because many states in the U.S. did not allow interracial marriage. Lena and Lenny did not announce their marriage for 3 years. She later said that she married him to advance her career, but she learned to love him. With Lenny at her side, Lena toured nightclubs and became an international star. In 1957, her name off the blacklist, Lena cut records, sang on TV, and starred on Broadway. But her most important work lay ahead. At a 1963 rally with Mississippi civil rights leader Medgar Evers, Lena sang the spiritual "This Little Light of Mine." She found not just her voice, but a calling, her light. Days later, Evers was slain. Down but unbowed, Lena drew on her freedom-fighting roots. She took time off from the stage and screen to join the civil rights movement. She sang at rallies for the National Council of Negro Women, at the March on Washington, where Dr. King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Lena spoke one word into the microphone: freedom! In this battle, Lena was not just a pretty face, she was a foot soldier. Eventually, the star returned to the silver screen as Glinda the Good Witch in The Wiz, and to Broadway in an award-winning one-woman show. Lena even sang on Sesame Street to a certain green frog. It wasn't easy being an ebony queen. Lena's life was not without sad notes. In 1967, she lost her dearest friend, composer and pianist, Billy Strayhorn, and in 1971 lost her father's son and husband, all in the same year. Lena was so down that the only way she could go was up. She stayed in and lost herself in books. Then music saved her. Lena remembered what band leader Count Basie, jazz royalty himself, had told her years earlier. They don't give us a chance very often, and when they do, we have to take it. Lena seized every opportunity to shine. Her crown silvery gray, Lena kept cutting records and winning praise. Grammy and Tony Awards, a Kennedy Center honor, honorary degrees from Howard University and Yale, and a place in the Big Band and Jazz Hall of Fame. Lena Horne's pioneering performances, her fight on the front lines of the freedom struggle, the racial barriers that she broke, and her fiery pride from her legacy. Because Lena refused to darken rear doors, black stars now gleam on red carpets and reap box office gold. And you see the stars have different black actors and musicians. Alright, that was the Legendary Miss Lena Horne. Did you guys like that book? Alright, our second book is about Ada Lovelace. And the book we are reading is Ada Lovelace, Poet of Science, the First Computer Programmer, by Diane Stanley, illustrated by Jessie Hartland, and published by Simon and Schuster. Long, long ago, on a cold winter day, a lonely little girl walked from room to room in a big, old, dark country house. Her name was Ada Byron, and she was looking for something to do. Ada was good at imagining things. She imagined it would be fun to fly. Then she went about it in a scientific way. First, she studied the flight and the anatomy of birds. She decided her wings would be like theirs, only larger in proportion to her size. She would build the frames out of sturdy wire so her wings would be strong, then cover the frames with oil-rubbed silk so they would also be light. Finally, she designed a harness to attach the wings to her back. She thought it would be fun to fly from house to house delivering the mail. She'd need to bring a bag for carrying the letters, a map, and a compass for navigation. She decided to write a book about her flying project, illustrated with pictures and diagrams. She would call it Flyology. And when she had finished that, Ada had a plan to build a steam-powered flying horse. Her mother, Lady Byron, was away at the time, so Ada spent regular updates. Her mother, Lady Byron, was away at the time, so Ada sent regular updates on the flying project. She signed the letters, "Your affectionate young turkey," or "Your affectionate carrier pigeon." She had never been so happy. But Lady Byron was worried. Ada seemed overexcited. Worse, she showed dangerous signs of too much imagination. In other words, she was acting like her father. Ada's parents were as different as chalk and cheese. Her father, the famous poet Lord Byron, was a worldwide celebrity, the rock star of his time. Her mother, Lady Byron, was interested in math and science. She was rational, respectable, and strict. Their marriage only lasted a year. Ada never knew her father. He left England soon after she was born and died in faraway Greece when she was 8. She wasn't even sure what he looked like. His portrait had been covered with a cloth. Being Lord Byron's daughter shaped Ada's childhood in important ways. Ada's mother wanted her to be calm and rational, not emotional and creative like her father. She hoped the study of math and science would suppress her daughter's imagination, so Ada was given a world-class scientific education. Her imagination was not harmed in the least. Ada loved machines. She lived during the Industrial Revolution, when things that were once made by hand, from ribbons and spoons to paper and glass, were being mass-produced in factories. When Lady Byron suggested a trip to see the new factories, Ada was thrilled to go. Everything they saw was interesting, but by far the best was the mechanical loom designed by a Frenchman, Joseph Marie Jacquard. It could automatically weave cloth in any design you can imagine, from a simple plaid to fancy brocade, to actual pictures of people, trees, and animals. But how did the loom know which pattern to weave? That was the amazing part. The design was translated into a pattern of holes punched into heavy paper cards. Long chains of these cards were fed into the loom, giving it instructions. To change the design, you only had to change the cards. Ada was amazed. It was a brilliant idea, and not just for weaving cloth. Why not use punched cards to direct other machines for other purposes? Ada was onto something. Soon she would see how right she was. At 17, Ada's quiet childhood came to an end. Her mother took her to London for the summer social season, a round of teas, dinners, and dances. Ada was dazzled by the gilded ballrooms and the beautiful ladies in their gleaming satin gowns. Everyone wanted to meet Ada because she was Lord Byron's daughter. But Ada didn't know what to say to them. She didn't care about fashion, fox hunting, or court gossip. Then she went to one of the weekly gatherings at the home of Charles Babbage, the great mathematician and inventor. All the interesting people went to his parties, from the writer Charles Dickens to the scientist Charles Darwin. As Ada moved through the crowd from one amazing conversation to another, she grew almost dizzy with excitement. They talked about important things: astronomy and politics, literature and art, and the latest engineering marvels. These were her kind of people. A few days later, Ada went to see a working portion of Babbage's new invention, a calculating machine called the difference engine. It could solve arithmetic problems at the turn of a crank. People called it a thinking machine, but Ada knew better. The intelligence was not in the machine itself, but in the genius of its designer. Ada felt an instant connection with Charles Babbage. She even dreamed of one day helping with his important work. And so began one of the most remarkable friendships in the history of science.
Yeah.
But Lady Byron had other plans for her daughter. Ada didn't need a profession. What she needed was a husband. So at 19, Ada married a wealthy aristocrat, William, Lord King. When she became the Earl of Lovelace, Ada Byron King changed her name once again. She would go down in the history as Ada Lovelace. By the time she was 24, Ada had 2 children running wild in the nursery and one still crying in his cradle. But she hadn't lost sight of her dream, just postponed it. Now, at last, her moment had come. Babbage was working on a revolutionary new machine called the analytical engine. It could be powered by steam. There was no electricity in those days. And it could do much more than just add and subtract. The analytical engine could run any kind of mathematical calculation, then store the results for later use. Best of all, he had borrowed Jacquard's idea of using punched cards to direct his engine, so he could easily change from one operation to another. In short, Charles Babbage had invented the first fully programmable, all-purpose digital computer. But there was a problem. So far, his engine was just a plan on paper. It would cost a fortune to build. To raise that kind of money, Babbage needed publicity. This was Ada's chance to help. An article had been written about the analytical engine, but it was in French. Ada translated it into English so it could be published in Britain. Then Babbage asked her to add some footnotes at the end explaining what an all-purpose computing engine could do. She was perfect for the job. She understood how the engine worked, she was a good writer, and she had the vision to see, better even than Babbage himself, how much more a computer could do besides just processing numbers. It could work with any kind of symbol, from words to musical notes. Ada imagined the analytical engine writing text, composing music, reproducing images, even playing games like checkers or chess. But before the machine could do any of those things, the symbols and rules of operation had to be changed into digital form. Today, we call that programming. Ada needed to explain to her readers exactly how that could be done. As an example to work with, she and Babbage chose an extremely complicated series of calculations called the numbers of Bernoulli, and then Ada showed step by tiny step how they could be coded for the machine. Finally, after 9 months of meticulous work, sketch of the analytical engine invented by Charles Babbage was published. Ada's notes by the translator were almost 3 times as long as the original article and far more important. Yet she wasn't credited by name, only in the initials AAL. She was afraid her work wouldn't be taken seriously if people knew it was written by a woman. Ada didn't care. The girl who had once dreamed of flying, who longed to do something important with her mind, had soared at last. She had looked into the future and imagined a computer age that wouldn't arrive for another 100 years. And in demonstrating how to code the numbers of Bernoulli, Ada Lovelace had written the first computer program ever published. All right, that was Ada Lovelace, poet of science, the first computer programmer. Wasn't that cool? All right, everyone, thank you for coming to Storytime. Now, just because we're done reading does not mean we have to be done with Storytime. If you come down to the library this week, you can pick up a Storytime kit, which are these fun-filled activity kits that we made to go with the books you read today. Each kit comes with a coloring sheet, a craft, and a tasty recipe that you can make with your grown-ups. This week, our craft is a microphone, so you can sing like Lena Horne. To get a kit, you need to come to the Fairfield County Library and look for some crates in the children's section. Now, you have 2 crates, one for Monday and one for Wednesday story time. So you want to make sure you grab the right kits, or you could end up with something completely different. The kits for this story time are in the Group B crate. They're the blue ones. New kits come out every week whenever there's a new story time, and if you want to try a kit from last week, it never hurts to ask one of the librarians. We might still have some. Maybe ask for me, Miss Nina. Okay, everybody, thank you for joining me for story time. Once again, my name's Miss Nina, and I look forward to seeing you in the library this week to pick up a story time kit. It's time to say goodbye, but I look forward to seeing you all next time. Bye!